So how do we fix zombie arm? Here at Tennis Reach, we believe that we have to look beyond the narrow bounds of tennis technique, delve into the universal challenges that players and coaches have experienced in other sports of how they solve the problems of rhythm, timing, and power generation. In our last series of lessons, we looked how Steph Curry, the greatest basketball shooter of all time, and Roger Federer, the greatest tennis player of all time, both used a common pelvic hip snap to generate their power. And a quick congratulations to Roger Federer, who today won his 20th Grand Slam title, beating Marin Cilic in a great 5-set match today in the Australian Open. Please don't misunderstand our approach here. We are not saying that all sports movement and sport techniques are the same. We are saying that all movement and technique comes from a universal source of the human body and spirit, trying to move as efficiently as possible under the greatest stress. Each sport, each discipline has developed its own pathway and techniques to meet this universal challenge. The goal of Tennis Reach is to try to learn what others have learned in these other disciplines and then customize these techniques for tennis, and also to develop a tennis vocabulary that truly reflects what we've learned. Before we go into this, I want to explain a little about myself and talk mostly about the master teachers I've had over the years, especially Doug King. Doug was a star player on the UC Berkeley tennis team, and he was the former #1 Open player in Northern California, and he's been a top tennis coach that college and professional players seek out to fix their games. He has been the director of tennis at the Meadowood Resort in Napa, California. I worked with Doug for many years, and we developed several online courses and many instructional videos that opened up the territory that we're exploring with Tennis Reach. If you want to see Doug King's online videos, they are on an excellent tennis instruction site called player.net, which is led by John Yandel, a master of tennis video analysis, also someone I worked closely with for several years. I mentioned developing a new tennis vocabulary because this was one of Doug King's recurring themes, that the words we use to coach tennis can be a help to fix a problem or can contribute to the problem. I would say that the term non-dominant hand or arm is a tennis expression that we should retire from our coaching lexicon. More to come on that. Let's get back to correcting zombie arm. In our earlier series, Ripple of Power, we saw how the body generates energy and transfers power. And we modified the old martial arts Tai Chi expression of how power is generated. We say that Tai Chi, that power is rooted in the foot, powered by the legs. We added carried by the hips, pelvis, and waist, and expressed by the arms. If done correctly, we see that this vertical energy from the ground and through our legs is carried in our pelvic hip snap and then expressed in a very fast acceleration of the racket through contact. We clarified that this ripple of action sequence is much more than a rotational turn around the body, that it involves a pelvic hip snap in which the left hip, if you're a right-handed hitter, stops or freezes at a certain point to allow the hitting arm and hitting hand to go through freely. So in this lesson today, I want to take our focus away from the mobile hitting side of the body in tennis and focus on the non-hitting and stabilizing force side of our body, which includes the so-called zombie arm.
All dynamic human movement involves two forces, stability and mobility. One side of the body must be stabilized to free the other side of the body for mobility. We see this here with the baseball swing, where the baseball hitter plants his lead foot and the non-hitting hip, the left hip here, rotates just as dynamically as the hitting side or right side. The difference is the non-hitting hip only rotates a short distance and then locks in place. This keeps the non-hitting side of the body from rotating too much and losing all the energy of the pelvis hip snap. Putting it another way, The non-hitting side, again the left side here, stabilizes and anchors the body, so the mobile side of the body, the hitting side, is free to move and pivot, delivering a leverage hit at contact. We see something almost identical in golf, where the golfer sinks into the lead leg and stabilizes the non-hitting side hip and shoulder. With this stability on the non-hitting side of the body, the hitting side, the right side here, has an anchor to brace against and pivot around into the hitting action. In soccer, we see the same universal interplay between stability and mobility, but with a few twists. And again, each sport meets the universal challenge of stability and mobility a bit differently. In soccer here, we are kicking a ball, not hitting it with a bat or a club in our hands. Secondly, we see a much greater tilt off vertical in the soccer shot than we saw in baseball and golf. And this calls for another stability point, the non-hitting arm, the left arm here, extending out to the side to help offset this tilt. Now with soccer, we have 4 major stabilizing points: the foot, hip, shoulder, and arm. These stabilizing points enable the soccer player hitting foot, the right foot here, to rotate up and around to execute a powerful kick of the soccer ball. So the universal of dynamic movement is stability on one part or side of the body and mobility on the other part or side of the body. Both sides of the body have to work in a sequential, integrated, rhythmic whole before we have skillful action in sport. And when that skill is refined and executed with flair, as we see here in the soccer kick, we say it's like art, that is beautiful. Soccer fans call soccer the beautiful sport. I think in tennis we could make the same claim, but perhaps we have to work through a few more things in our discussion before we talk about that.